guys, welcome to episode 52 of my Warhammer 40k Conquest review. This week, so unsurprisingly, we're going to be reviewing issue 52 of Warhammer Conquest. Not much has come with this issue, just a big pot of textured astrogranite. Current retail price about $4.75, which means that you're actually spending $2.25 more than you normally would to get that pot. Obviously, that doesn't include the cost of the magazine. Last week I speculated there might be something else in the magazine, but you know, there doesn't appear to be. No extra maps, nothing like that. Nope. So I think it's maybe the first magazine where we're not making our money back before we even look at the magazine. Still useful little pot. You can use it for lots of things. I don't tend to use it myself, but that's because I'm building battle boards for my gaming areas, so I want my bases to match my battle boards, and I can't astrogranite into our battle board. Not sure what I'll do with it, but I'm sure I'll think of something. I'll come up with some use for it. Sorry guys, a little twitchy tonight. Well, a little twitchy most nights. For anybody new to the podcast, I have Tourette's, it's a thing. Anyway, let's get into the magazine. Page 1, as always, the rundown. And then we have an amazing piece of artwork there. Mantles of Corruption. A Death Lord earns the right to lead through his talents for destruction, corruption and survival. Mortarion expects his lords to choose a leadership style that best matches their skills. So that's pretty cool. Got quite a grotesque guy there, his guts spilling out. He has this massive great flail made of human heads. So that's pretty cool. Let's have a look. And this is going through something called the Mantles of Corruption. I'm just going to give a quick read. To ensure his champions and their battlefield leaders work well with his forces, Mortarion has created Mantles of Corruption. Each of these mantles has become associated with power and menace over the millennia. The strategies and armaments of each type are instantly recognisable as symptoms of Nurgle's greatest plagues. The most aggressive lords take up the Mantle of Contagion. Lords of Contagion wear filth-covered cataphractic Terminator armour. For those of you unfamiliar, there are many early types of Terminator armour which eventually evolved into the Terminator armour we have today. Cataphracti was one of them. If you go and look on Forge World, they've got a ton of them. If you go and look in the Betrayal of Calth box set, there's some Cataphracti in there. It's just a cool, weird looking, different looking style of armour. They are available to use in 40k, but mostly for character and leader guys. Although you can get units with Cataphracti, the Wolf Lords certainly have them. I believe the basic Marines can have Cataphracti Terminator armor, and I'm not sure the specifics of Cataphracti, but a lot of the older types of armor work differently. For example, they might have a higher invuln but a lower standard save. They're basically sort of a holy relic of a bygone era, but they're functionally the same thing. They just look mental. Where Cataphracti Terminator armor and wield vast two-handed weapons, they favour the Death Guard's traditional direct strategies, directing overwhelming power at the foe with little cunning or subtlety. Death Guards favour the grinding advance, just vast forces to destroy the foe. By comparison to the Lords of Contagion, Lords of Poxes favour the spreading of airborne diseases and merciless destruction of the enemy by attrition. Lords of Virulence, meanwhile, are masters of mass bombardment and artillery strikes, hammering their enemies with heavy firepower and decimating their ranks in the same way that lethal infection would lay its victims low. Some Mantles of Corruption are taken up only rarely and by the most gifted warriors. The Mantle of Parasitism the mantles of parasitism, withering, and flux are some of the more infrequently gifted rewards. It is even rumored that only one mantle exists that. It is even rumored that I'll try that again. It is even rumored that one mantle exists that none have ever been worthy of, and it would transfer its bearer into a being of pure chaos. I think possibly they mean transform. But yep, there's some cool stuff there. Some nice pictures as well. Tactical squads. Next page, we're basically going through the different squads. It's going through what a tactical squad is. If you're collecting from Conquest, if you're collecting purely from the Conquest magazine, you won't have any tactical squads, so don't worry about it. Tactical squads are a formation that the older Marines, that the original Space Marines work in rather than the Primaris Marines. Tactical squad having 9 Battle Brothers and 1 heavy weapon. Well, I'll say 9 Battle Brothers. It has 8 Battle Brothers, a Sergeant, and a Battle Brother with a heavy weapon, so 10 guys in total. The Sergeant can take a few extra specialist stuff, specialist bits and pieces, and you can take a heavy weapon, and sometimes you get a flame or something else as well, depending on how you do it. The idea is that a tactical squad can be equipped to handle pretty much anything. Having played Space Wolves, I never got a tactical squad. We got Grey Hunters, which in my opinion were better because you could equip them all to operate in the same range, and you could then rely on the fact that your heavy weapons guys were better than standard heavy weapons guys and could split fire. They're not something that you do with with Primaris Marines. Primaris Marines actually use a style that is more similar to Space Wolves in that each unit has a specialist function and has to work together. It's also more similar to the way that Legions work. To the older Legions, each unit would have a specialist function, and those units would have to be used together in a comprehensive tactical way, which is why they're built that way. The background of it is that the background of that is basically that Call started building these legions, started building the Primaris just after the legions had, just after the heresy had happened, and so legions were the way that Space Marines worked. So he built it on the old patterns. Then Gilliman changed how everything worked, but didn't bother telling Call to upgrade the strategies. So Call just basically upgraded the old strategies rather than adopting the new strategies. Maybe it's something that he died before he could tell. Got stabbed and then taken out of the picture before he could tell Call, and hasn't bothered working on since he came back because he's been in direct control. He didn't need to run something else. But yeah, it goes on about how versatile the tactical squad is, how they can be used for pretty much any situation. And that is the advantage of the tactical squad. You can have any heavy weapon you want. The most common one is often the rocket launcher, because with its frag and crack missiles, it can be quite good in multiple situations, as opposed to being very good in specific situations. You can equip them with las cannons, plasma cannons, whatever you want to. But yeah, the idea is that your tactical squad will have the ability to deal with troops fairly well, tanks fairly well, elite warriors fairly well, and everything else fairly well. They basically form the backbone of your armies, and also they're good at holding positions. It's quite advantageous to hold positions with a tactical, because you don't, if you're trying to hold an objective, you don't know what your opponent's going to throw at you, and you can't really maneuver around that much. That being said, I never had any problem holding objectives with Grey Hunters back when I used them, and then maneuvering my my long fangs, or often my dreadnoughts, which I always used to go dreadnought heavy because, well, basically I didn't use them as sort of these unstoppable machines, but rather constantly mobile heavy weapons platforms. I put them in heavy cover and get them hold down and use them that way. But that's just differences between things. Tactical squads are the old tactical squad is a very, very effective formation. So that's pretty cool. Got some cool stuff there. Next, the Iron Hands. Iron Hands are again one of the original founding chapters with their Primarch Ferrus Manus. Ferrus Manus actually fought with a giant, weird, regenerating lizard creature and plunged it into lava so the creature melted, but the stuff it was made of ran all up his arms, and basically his arms got replaced with metal arms. Or rather got covered by metal. Then he had living metal hands, hence the term the Iron Hands, although the metal itself was called necrodermis. So, you know, given that name, you can guess what the creature was and where the regenerating metal came from, and why it regenerated even. Obviously, for those of you who aren't familiar with the term Necron, Necrons are another faction within 40k. One that I think could use a bit of love. I think a lot of the factions, Space Marine is getting a lot of love at the moment. I think some of the other factions could use some hugs and kisses. So that's a... yeah, sorry. Sorry. So that's all fairly cool. This goes into what they are. The general belief of the Iron Hands is that the flesh is weak. As such, you can imagine they have an incredibly deep relationship with the Mechanicum, but they are very much their own things. As time goes by, they often, as you can see from this one, they often replace bits of themselves with mechanical bits. If you actually look into some of the backstory, whilst Ferrus Manus did have a certain level of this belief, he didn't want them turning into machines. And if he ever comes back, which he might, it might be an interesting conversation. But then again, if any of them came back, it would be an interesting conversation. Even the Ultramarines that followed a very specific thing. You know, Robot was very confused as to why they were worshipping things and pseudo-religious. You know, he came in like, this is the holy chair. How can you? He sat down on a chair and they're like, this is the holy chair of Robert Gilliman. He went, no, this is just, you know, my chair. It's comfy. What the heck are you worshipping a chair for? And I'd imagine many conversations will be had. Ferrus Manus, I believe, has his head cut off. Ferrus Manus was killed at the Istvan Drop Site Massacre, although there are rumours that a giant mechanical dreadnought is stomping around, but who is to say? Anyway, other than that, they're sort of operated very similar to standard Marines. They're run by something called the Iron Council. Deeply influenced by the disaster from Istvan, the Irons did not want any single warrior to lead them to tragedy again. Instead, the captains and most revered warriors of the chapter formed an Iron Council. Those that sat upon the council became known as the Iron Fathers, and the Iron Council has guided their Iron Hands ever since. And we've got some nice little bits and pieces there. You can see there we've got some very Mechanicum-like symbols. They're probably one of the most technologically advanced guys, and they probably have the largest proportion of dreadnoughts, as you would imagine. Ultimate Honor. It's got a little bit there. As an Iron Hand warrior ages, he tends to grow even more resentful of his own flesh, gradually replacing his original limbs with an array of enhancements. The ultimate honour for an Iron Hand Space Marine is to become mind-fused with the body of a dreadnought. In being so transformed, they can leave their mortal bodies behind and wage war for all eternity as a living machine. So, badasses, basically. Master of Sanctity, Autumn Cassus. Another little blip here about a specific character. He's the oldest living Ultramarine. Over his long service, he has fought all kinds, but his experience fighting and hatred for the all-devouring Tyranids is by far the greatest. So he's pretty much a badass. You can see there he's in the Death Watch. Where he set about creating. it goes about him fighting the Tyranids, and he set up creating a new force made up of Ultramarines who survived the Tyrannic Wars. They would specialise in combating the Tyranid threat. Though initially few in number, each new clash with the higher fleets provided fresh followers to his growing cause. So if you wanted to create an anti-Tyranid force, this is the guy that you would use to run it. Sorry guys, just sweaty as what's names. He's also a Deathwatch veteran, which you can kind of guess by the fact he's wearing Deathwatch armour. And he's a High Chaplain. His weapon arm remains strong. As Master of Sanctity, he's responsible for overseeing the spiritual well-being of his chapter, and his words have carried the Ultramarines to battle countless times. So, another awesome character there. Here we're going next. We've got Death Guard Land Raiders. This one's actually quite full. It's got a lot of. It's covering a lot of awesome ground. It's one of the reasons I do like the ones that come with the paints, because what they lack in cool models, they make up for in cool bump. I mean, yeah, we've covered Mantles of Corruption, Tactical Squads, the Iron Hands, the Anti-Tyranid Master of Sanctity, and now we're going to Death Guard Land Raiders. Among the mightiest of the vehicles in the Death Guard armories, Land Raiders are prized as status symbols by the Lords of the Traitor Legions. Those that possess these rare trophies guard them jealously. As in all Death Guard tanks, Land Raiders are ripe with the foul blessings of Nurgle, parasitic horrors, and unnatural plagues. It basically goes on to explain why they're rotted. Sometimes they can be demon engines, where instead of having a machine spirit, the thing's been taken over and is run by a demon. And that's pretty cool. And you can see in this one, it's got tentacles growing out of it. They can be possessed and weird nastiness, so that's really cool. We've got a couple of pictures here of Death Guard Land Raiders. These ones are fairly basic. Porphyrics. Recovered from beneath the disease-ridden mud of Vrax, this Land Raider was quickly pressed into service by the Second Plague Company pronunciation. The Porphyrics is now thick with ferric blight, a corrosive disease that can spread to enemy vehicles and eat away their armor plating. That's pretty cool. Leucocyst. The personal Land Raider of the Lord of Contagion Malaris, this tank has been claimed by the Nurgle demon known as Leucocyst or Leucocyst. In its long service, it has consumed many unfortunate Plague Marine passengers. Leucocyst's powerful hunger has shown no signs of lessening over the centuries. That is one thing that can happen if you put guys in a demon-possessed tank. It can decide that it just wants to eat their souls. The temptation is good, is high. Here, yet another cool thing. Contagion of Blood. From the earliest days of the Imperium, the Blood Angels have fought to defend the Emperor's realm in spite of the darkness that gnaws at their souls. The Sons of Sanguinius, I can't pronounce it. Sanguine is another word for blood, or sanguinary and things like that. Sanguinius or sanguinois, or whatever, how it's pronounced. They come up with a lot of cool names, but they don't give you a pronunciation guide, and if they did, people would disagree. Have proven themselves true heroes time and time again. Even now, they remain a beacon of hope amidst the gathering darkness. The Blood Angels are very much a chapter, sort of two contradicting ideals. They're berserker vampires, but they're also one of the most human of chapters. They value people, they value humanity. They want to, their ultimate goal is to be good and noble warriors, but at the same time, they are slavering berserkers. And goth vampires who drink blood. So, they're really quite cool. Again, they're a founding they're one of the original chapters, directly founded by Primarch. They have a lot of different chapters, and they have a mutation which is part of a psychic problem. It's rather than it being a genetic mutation or a flaw in the gene seed. Horus's favourite brother by far was supposedly Sanguinius. And when Horus betrayed him and killed him, it was such a shocking act that it sent psychic reverberations throughout the entire chapter. Sanguinius felt so betrayed as he died that his rage infected the entire chapter. So their flaw, and a flaw that's carried through the gene seed, even though it's not technically a gene seed flaw, means that they can eventually succumb to something called the Black Rage, which just mechanically just gives them a ton of attacks. They go in completely batshit mental, no thought for defense, and just lay out a metric ton of attacks. I think you can get something like 60 to 80 to 100 attacks or something ridiculous. I've not played Dark Angels and certainly haven't played them on the current edition, so I don't know. I haven't even played against them in the current edition, so I don't know specifically what they can do. But I do know that they are kind of the preeminent hand-to-hand guys. They've got quite a few fast bits and pieces, so they can get their guys into combat quite quickly, and they are very nasty. They have their assault squads and they have their jump squads, but they also have the death company. Basically, guys who lost control. They're led by a blood angel chaplain, whose job is basically to keep them on a leash until it's time, and then just send them off to die. It's considered kind of a great shame of the chapter. The armor's painted black, but it is one of the most badass things about the chapter, particularly in game terms. And here, basically, it's going through the history of the Blood Angels in a timeline style thing, so that's all fairly cool. Loads of cool bump in these things. You're right. They've got the painting guide for this episode issue is on painting and highlighting bases. This is fairly easy. Obviously, you cover the bases in your astrogranite, and then you put a wash over them, and then highlight them with various colours. It gives you several variants. Whatever wash you use and highlights you use can really change the colour. A lot of people kind of don't use that much grey, but frankly, grey's a really good colour to use with other colours and with other washes. You wash it with green. Well, yeah, it's got Dank Swamp shade. You wash it with Athonian camo, and you're coming out that kind of Death Guard green. Muddy Mire, you're washing it with Agrax Earth shade, and using Rakoff Flesh and Steel Legion, you're coming out with a kind of muddy brown. And then you've got City Ruins, where you use non-oil Celestia grey, and then do the edging in Abaddon black. And you're coming out with a very cityfied thing. All you need to do is wash it, dry brush it. It's very quick. It's very simple. Some people like to do it before they stick the guys on the bases. I prefer to do my bases afterwards. I tend to be very careful. I use paper to block up the feet and just carefully brush around the feet. But that's just because I prefer a much I prefer the models to be stuck to the base, because it gives a much better hold than if you stick it on top of the paint. A neat trick I often use is, a lot of battlefields are muddy, so if I'm dry brushing it, I can then cover. If I do get paint on the feet, which I don't usually do, but if I do, I can use mud or other such detritus that the boots have picked up to cover that look. Even if you do dry brush feet, it usually looks like they just picked up gunk from whatever they're treading on, so it's not actually that difficult. And you can often match the tones if you're careful, and also edge highlighting around the bottom of the feet. As you can see, they've done that with this guy. You can usually cover it up quite easily. Here, obviously, they're on the example page, they're showing you doing the bases before anything's stuck on. Here, they're showing you doing the bases with stuff stuck on. So that's pretty cool. Another advantage to dry brushing with on the bases is where you don't go so near the feet, it tends to leave sort of darker patches around the feet, which kind of makes it look like a shadow, in my opinion. But you've got a load of stuff there. And then they suggest rimming, painting around the edge of the base black. I always do, mostly because I think it looks neater, but When I was a kid, I just cover the entire base so that it was almost invisible. Bases weren't as important back then. Nowadays, particularly when you're measuring from the base, you want to keep that rim clean, and you want to be able to see exactly where it is just for ease of measurement, because a lot of the measurements now come from the base. Here we go. We've got Ultramarine strategies here. Strategies. Here's more things that one command point, one command point, one command point. Here's more things that you can take. We've had basic strategies previously. These ones are specific to the Ultramarines. And here we have in the next page, there's also examples of how they work. In the next page, we have Death Guard stratagems. So you've got more stuff you can select to bump your leaders up. And another example of how they work. Another big, nice section for your rulebook. At the moment, I've just got these separated by issue. At some point, my intent is to go back. My intent is to buy a big solid ring binder and probably some sleeves just to keep the stuff in good condition and divide it all out. So basically, I've got all the rules in one book so I can access them. But it's up to you how you store yours. Nice story for the next mission: Death Guard at the Dockyard, or Death at the Dockyard. The Kalon docks. You're using your stuff there, which is cool. You're using various bits of scenery that you've already got on top of there. It's another corner to corner thing, so that's pretty cool. This one, you've got 7 Plague Marines, 12 Poxwalkers, 10 Chaos Cultists, a Plague Burst Crawler, and a Lord of Contagion. So that's about 30. Yeah, that's about 30 guys. It's 30. Yeah, it's exactly 30 guys in one tank. So that's quite a large unit. That's fairly cool. The Space Marines have 5 Intercessors, 3 Hellblasters, 5 Reavers, a Primaris Captain, and a Redemptor Dreadnought. So you're looking at 14 guys and a Dreadnought there. But you have to remember that those 14 guys are going to be a hell of a lot better than your Poxwalkers and Chaos Cultists. But that's a standard army for an invasion, particularly early stages of Chaos Invasion, because you're going to be drawing from heavily from the population, bringing in cultists and using infected guys to do the damage. In addition to that, obviously, it's harder for the Chaos Legions to maintain their numbers, so they tend to commit fewer Marines and rely on whatever else they can get their hands on to bulk out their numbers. No one's making, well, I say no one, very few people are making new Death Guard. There are some being made, but they certainly don't have the mass manufacturing process that Space Marines have. That being said, they can corrupt natural Space Marines. They can corrupt normal humans, and they can try and elevate them to Death Guard if those humans are viable. And I'd imagine they do, but with all the influence of Chaos, the failure rate for converting... Now, it doesn't talk that much about the failure rate for Marines, but not everyone that gets implanted with Gene Seed becomes a Marine. Many of them, the Gene Seed fails and dies. A lot of this is sort of left loose in the bump, but one of the examples is, when a Marine dies, there's Gene Seed that they take out, and that's what makes the next Marine. There has to be, there are other ways of making Gene Seed. One of the theories is that a Marine is capable of having the Gene Seed removed multiple times throughout his life if he lives long enough. Another is that you can make Gene Seed from scratch. That is something confirmed by the fact that some chapters have their Gene Seed held by the Imperium, and then it's handed out whenever they need more Marines. The Raven Guard stocks were corrupted, so they had to restock from stuff kept on Earth by the Imperial bureaucracy rather than their own stuff. So there's a lot of, there's definitely other ways of making Gene Seed and other laboratory used ways, but it doesn't really, very rarely do the novels talk about that. Some of the Space Marine novels have spoken about that in an attempt to rid them of the curse of the Wolfen. One of the Wolf Priests attempted to create improve on the Space Wolf thing. Then Magnus ran out and stopped him personally. which some people think it was just Magnus stopping him, but there is a theory that the reason he stopped him was because he knew that the Space Wolves were necessary for the fight against Chaos. There is a strong following of the idea that Magnus's ultimate plan is to side with the Emperor, and that he only pledged to Tzeentch in order to betray him. And the theory then follows that Tzeentch knows this, and that Tzeentch's ultimate plan for the end times is to die, because that's the one thing he's never done, and that Magnus will rise to take his place as a Chaos power. But at the same time, Magnus, you know, the new Lord of Change, might not be against the Imperium. It's a weird, complex thing. But anyway. Right. Onto the page that many of you enjoyed. Next week, we've got a single bike. That's probably going to be given away with the other 2 bikes I've got. I'm probably going to stick on my Twitter account or something, because I'm doing purely Primaris. So watch next week. There will be a prize draw. This is going to be another one where it's not quite worth the money you pay for it. Space Marine bikes, I don't believe, are available singularly anymore. They used to be about worth a tenner, but frankly, you buy them in squads. You never buy a single bike. So we're probably, you know, that's another one where it's not quite worth the entirety of the cash. I'll work out what the exact one is for the issue, but we're probably going to be losing a couple of quid there. It's worth noting that the magazine itself is easily worth the difference between this between the $4.75 this costs and the £8 I paid for it. The magazine itself is a fantastic magazine, and whenever I talk about, oh yeah, we're making money, we're losing money, I'm talking about purely about the things you get on it. If you were to throw the magazine away, you'd still be making money. The magazine itself is not a free thing. It is not something that comes for free with the stuff. The magazine is supposedly worth £8. Frankly, I would put its value at £4, £3, maybe £4, just because of the thickness of it. But they're still really cool magazines, and there's certainly nothing to be snared out of the magazine itself. Then you look at Typhus. Next, the week after next, we have Typhus. We've had some big bads for the Space Marines. We've had some big bads for Death Guard, but Typhus is the first sort of A-tier special character we've had. Typhus was the first. Typhus is the Herald of Nurgle and was the first Death Guard to fall to the Allfather, to fall to Grandfather Nurgle, and he is actually responsible for bringing the entire Legion over. Also worth noting that Mortarion hates him. Mortarion had him killed, and Typhus died and then was resurrected as the Destroyer Hive. So he's also one of the nastiest characters that the Death Guard have. That they have full stop. So with the, one of the nastiest characters that Chaos Space Marines have full stop. So that's going to be well worth it. I don't know Typhus's exact price, but as a Chaos Space Marine special character in Terminator armor, I believe that is. I also believe that might be Cataphractic Terminator armor, but I'm not sure. You're probably looking about 20 quid. So in 2 weeks' time, did I say 2 months? I think I did. In 2 weeks' time, we're definitely going to be making our money back on that one. Okay, hope you guys enjoyed that, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that video, and if you did, remember to like and subscribe to my channel. I'm also on Facebook and Twitter. Not sure why, but I am. So if you like it, see me there, and please tell your friends. Thanks very much. Bye.